I went in service with the 11th grade, actually. Like 6 weeks graduating to the 12th grade, and I decided to go into service in 1966. In April, I joined and started off 17 years old, and I knew everything already, so I didn't need any more school. I decided it was time to be on my own. I felt like there was a lot of things I needed to do and wanted to do, and that was my way of getting my freedom to choose. Excuse me. I went in there thinking, I could get a good education, finish my school. I'd learn a trade. I'd learn how the world is, you could see that. So I finished my training. The first thing, I was still too young to go to Vietnam. So I was sent to Germany. And so I spent 9 months in Germany before I was accepted. I volunteered for Vietnam, and the third time they actually took me in January. They accepted it, and I shipped out in May. And I got to Vietnam the 29th of May, and that's where my war career started. Well, I was trained as a combat engineer at Fort Leonard, Missouri. From there, I got my orders to go to Germany. When I got there, I went into the office, and the first sergeant asked me what I did. I thought, well, I'm a tanker. I'm a combat engineer. And he says, well, here's the job out here. He pointed out the window to a big tank, and he said, you'll be driving that tomorrow. So that ended my combat engineer training. I learned explosives and things like that, building bridges, terrain, a lot of helpful things that I learned in combat engineers helped me when I got to Vietnam. When I got into Vietnam, because I was a tanker in Germany, that's what they told me I was going to do when I got to my first duty station. So I went to the first Cav.
Cavalry?
The first Cavalry Division, right off, and it was sitting in a tent, and everybody else was out in the field. They had a place called English. They got hit. It was the first Cav outpost, and they were being overrun, and a lot of things was happening. Overrun is when you have the enemy has breached your line of defense and are inside your compound. And they were doing quite a bit of pretty hectic fighting, had a lot of casualties, and they were flying choppers with the infantry in and dropping them and just coming back out with the wounded. I didn't get out in the battle because I was waiting to be assigned a tank.
Okay.
And so I was there when they got hit, and just about the time they got hit, I was transferred to the 4th Infantry Division up in the mountains called the Central Highlands. And they have what they call a 0 week when you get there. They put you in training to get you familiar with the country and how to, accept things and what to expect. And so about my 3rd day in that, man next to me threw a grenade and it slipped out of his hand and landed on me. So I spent the next 3 months in the hospital. And so here I am, fresh in country, and I'm laid in the hospital. It was an accident. It had been raining, the monsoon. It was really muddy, and his foot had slipped in the mud. But I didn't know he threw the grenade on me. We were all through our grenades, but he had slipped in the mud. When he did, he slung it next to him, and that's where I was at. And it went all 4 feet from me. And so I got a little ride to the aid station and to a couple more aid stations and then surgery. And I went to 5 different hospitals. As clear as if it was happening right now, because sometimes I'll see that flash in my face and I'll be sitting here just as calm. If you see me jerk or something, I remembered something flashing on me, But I didn't get that feeling that you described. I got the feeling of, man, am I lucky. I looked around, I'm still alive. And I felt kind of numb, but everything works right. So I got up on my knee, I pushed with my left arm, and it collapsed. I said, "What's going on?" I tried again, and it just wouldn't work.
And you're not in pain for the first time?
No pain, no pain. And then I worked around, got on my knees, and I tried to get up here, and my leg gave out from under me. And I was unable to get up after that, but I still didn't have the pain. But I guess I was in shock. But I pulled my shirt open, and I saw all these little nipple dents in me, where the metal fragments that went in. And my pants were torn. I opened them up a little bit, and I had holes here in my leg, and my hand, and the back of my arm, leg. I had volunteered for it. I wanted to be a war hero. That don't happen, It's not something you go and intend to do, and it happens. But I wanted to come back home and be the big hero and all this stuff. And it's a very sobering spot when you walk off of an airplane and you step on the cement runway out there, and the air hits you kind of like some of the summer days we've been having. Humid, hard to breathe, bugs. And this was 3 o'clock in the morning. And we set our duffel bags aside and sat on them. Some guys laid on them, and just panting and talking and wondering what's going to happen. I was looking for snipers, and we were safe there. But these big cockroaches came out that big with pinchers, and they had people jumping and screaming and biting hard. So it was just kind of a jumping right into the moment, I was in this checkpoint 3-2. We got a mission during the monsoon season, and we went out the back way to keep from being observed. And it was actually my first mission as LRRP, Long Range Recon Patrol. And it rained, and we were in a tea plantation because they had a lot of activity out there, but we were just going to hide and watch because I was in more or less training. And it just kept raining. You couldn't get anything dry. But we was out there 3 days, and we came back in the middle of the night. It was raining so hard it hurt your skin when it hit, and you couldn't see very far. We got to the road in front of the main gate at this place, and they had the guard towers with machine guns. And one of the friends told me, he said, "I hope they're not smoking anything because we're dead." So anyway, we got up there to the road to cross. It was literally to my chest in mud where it was a dry powder before the monsoon. But we walked, it was chest deep. We had to hold our weapons up over our heads and walk in. And we got in the middle of the road, and the guard stopped us. So we're all standing there, it's 5 of us, and chest deep in mud, and wondering how long we got to be here. They had to go send for the officer of the day, which is a lieutenant who was in charge of the guard stations. And it seemed like 15, 20 minutes before he showed up. And we were, all this time we're saying, New York Yankees, Mom's apple pie, and everything we could think of. And they knew we were Americans, but they were doing what they were told. We had to stay there. But when we got in, it was just like we dipped in chocolate, I laid on the side of a hill with my crew, 3 of us, and it rained so hard that we had to lay on our back with our pack for a pillow and our hat pulled over our face and our weapon across our chest. And you lay there flat like that so you can raise up if you make contact. It rained so hard that night. When it stopped raining in the morning and lightened up, it didn't ever stop. We got up and there was trenches, probably 6 inches deep on each side of us, where the water ran around us coming off the hillside. And so it wasn't hard to tell that 3 guys had spent the night there. So we disguised it, and covered it with leaves and stuff and went on our way. When they put us in, we would go in and do some flybys and some false drops. And then we go into a place that's really rugged to avoid ambush. And they would be about 15 feet from the ground. And here we are carrying 80, 90 pounds. And we had to jump out of that chopper. And they try to get us into elephant grass where there's a little bit of water. And that wasn't as good as the pilots thought it was, because we hated it. We go in and jump into that, and the elephant grass is way up here, a few feet below the chopper skids. And then we go down another 10 feet before we hit any water. And then when you go in the water, you're in mud knee deep, and you're struggling to get above the water. You're stuck in the mud, and you have to learn how to get loose real quick, because sometimes you'd even be stuck under the water. We never came under fire on a mission where we were dropped in, but we've been under fire on extraction where we've been shot at, and we're trying to bring chopper down mostly so we get more of it. I was sitting in a mess hall eating supper one evening, and the LRRP came in there, and he was talking to all the guys about what he did, because everybody was curious when he done things. And he kind of glorified it. He said, listen here. He said, I was in the Korean War, and he said, I learned a long time ago, you don't want to be in the big group and the enemy's coming after. He said, you want to be in that small group that watches the enemy. And he said, you got a better way of surviving and taking control. Like the Hal Moore thing that happened in English, when they were overrun, they sat there just waiting for it to happen. You don't have no control when, where. You're just there. If it happens, you got to respond. Now, when you take 3 guys that's in on a mission for 7 days to watch a certain area or set an ambush, you go out there and you're quiet. You don't walk on the trails. You go way out of the way, the worst parts you can find to walk through. In this way, you come across the enemy before they see you. And it's not walking through the woods, it's creeping. Every step is very slow. If any of you watched Platoon, the movie, it showed these guys, the Viet Cong, come in during the night ambush, and they were coming in an American fire line, and they were just creeping so slow in the fog that you just looked like ghosts coming through there until they got in the ambush. And that's what I did, but we didn't go out with a platoon full of guys. There was 3 of us. We had 2 different groups of guys. I started out as a long-range recon. You just strictly go and get information. You don't get seen. If anybody sees you or knows you're there, you call for extraction, get pulled out. Later, I went to what they called a Hawkeye team. It was the ambush sniper team. We get information of the VC going into a village and recruit people and beating them up and, just really bullying them. We find out what trail they were coming in on, about what time they come in, and we go down there and stay until they came through, and we would ambush them. Right. We worked directly for military intelligence, G2 section. We had an ambush, and we had killed the 2-point men. Guys stay usually about 50 to 75 yards ahead of the main group, and they dressed down like all they had was like black pajamas. And their job is to find any ambushes or see if there's any troops, American troop movement or whatever. And then back behind him's another guy right in front of that squad that's a little bit farther ahead, is fully weaponed. And he's the one who would take action, if they were ambushed. But we had seen these 2 guys, and we knew they were Viet Cong point men, and we went ahead and ambushed them. And then we called in and advised our unit that what we had done, and they said, well, stay in the area and see if there's any other movement. And this was just a little while before Tet. So they were building up a lot of forces. And so we were doing a dual purpose, ambushing as well as trying to find movement or any sign of movement. We had killed those 2 guys, and we backed off and went way back into the jungle, made a circle, and came back about the same place to see if anybody had been through there since we killed these guys. And they had, because the bodies were gone. And so we stepped back out of the way and to decide what we were going to do. And we had a little low place, probably, I don't know, a foot deep and pretty good size, enough 3 of us could get in it, or there's 4 of us at that time. And we were just sitting there, and we were visible probably from the waist up. And we saw this guy come walking in the trail, the same one we got these guys on. And we hadn't had time to leave yet. And so we were just stuck there. It's kind of in the open. That's something, big mistake we made. So the first one was coming, he had a BAR, Browning automatic machine gun. And he was dressed in NVA uniform. And so he went by, and we thought maybe he was a point man, but this point man wasn't in front like the rest of them. Right behind him, about 5 steps, was another one. And we just kept seeing him coming. And I said, oh, what are they going to do? You know, and every one of them looked at us, at least kept their eyes and looked at us. Some completely turned and looked at us. And there was 15 of them. Everybody else had either a BAR or an AK-47 machine gun, Chinese communists. And the last one did one of these little waves, you know, and looked at us and kind of smiled. Because they knew that they had walked into an ambush, and we hadn't done that. If they only knew what was really happening, we'd been dead, you know. So that gave us an idea that there's a buildup coming. And you could tell they weren't green recruits, but they were battle guys, you know. After they went by, I told the guys, I said, we got to get out of here because they're coming back. See, do you think so? I said, yeah, listen. And you could hear them fanning out through the jungle in a half circle. Behind us is the only way we could go, and there was a briar patch. I mean, thorn patch that you wouldn't believe. So I said, we got to do it. So we called in and told them what direction was going, and we might need some fire support. Either we asked for air support, but we would have took artillery if we could get it. We had a radio, if we were close enough to our unit, our main camp, that we could call straight in, that was great. Or else we had to go through a relay station that would pass it on. But they had the numbers and frequencies for the units that respond, and they were on call. And they could be there in just very few minutes. But we could hear them coming after us. Then after we hit through the briar patch, we could hear them tearing through it too. And we began at a kind of a steady trot. And this happened for 3 or 4 hours, I guess, that they chased us. We were down because we'd been in the woods a while, and we had eaten some of our rations, but we still had all our ammunition, our radios, and I had 3 guns. I had an M79 grenade launcher, M14 with a scope, and a 45 caliber pistol. And I had ammunition for all those I was carrying, as well as we had our water, and that's pretty heavy to carry. And we're going in an area with not much water. We'd have 2 canteens. The guys, they were just tickled that they didn't get ambushed, and they figured it out after they got by. And then they decided to go ahead and go after us. There was a bounty on us in Vietnam, as much as one of their generals made in a year. And all they had to do was bring back a body part and our uniform to prove, you know, who we were. And we wore the tiger stripe fatigues. You can see that it's a kind of a different camo than even the Army troops wore. But they had us picked out. So they were going to try to catch us. And so we ran, and they were behind us. We got through the briars finally. We didn't have any clothes on. They were gone. Just we had looked like a bikini on. I had the front of my shirt down to the pockets, and the pockets were there. No sleeves.
Just because the thorns had
ripped everything out. The thorns had just tore our clothes off of us. And we had no hats. our weapons and our packs were still on. One of the guys dropped his pack and left it. But we ran for a long time and we called in the airstrike, and there was these kind of World War II type prop planes, and it make you think it's back in Second World War. But they came down and I told them on the radio, I said, I'm gonna throw smoke. And I said, I'm bringing up the rear. And so the pilot said, throw your smoke. I tossed it over my shoulder and just kept going. And they came in and started that smoke strafing and dropping their ordnance, their bombs behind us. And they made about 3 or 4 passes like that. We had gunships up there circling, but the canopy was so thick they couldn't see. The trees is one layer over another, and sometimes it's like just almost dark in the middle of the day. But we kept running, and it got dark on us by then, and the point man went off a cliff, I don't know, 12, 15 foot deep. He went off in there, and the rest of us went right behind him. And because we were kind of a trot. And we piled up down there and laid there moaning and groaning. And I said, guys, let's go. If we're crawling, we better go. If you was an old guy, you was probably about 25, 26. Most of us was between 18 and 25. And a guy could come in there at 25 years old to the unit and not know nothing compared to an 18-year-old that's been there 6 months. So anything that we learned, mostly, we had our training to get us by, but a lot of it was just learning while we were out there. We learned some very valuable things that helped troops too. And that was the idea of the whole thing is to be able to counter the enemy before they get a chance to do what they're doing. It wasn't long after we saw these guys that didn't want to make contact with us, and we had the Tet Offensive. And they had orders not to make contact with anybody. These guys thought they had a chance of just grabbing us, and going on. They didn't expect us to escape. That's why they were so diligent trying to kill us and chase us, because they knew they weren't supposed to make contact. But after they were seen, they didn't know what else they could do, I guess. But they had a lot of movement like that of enemy soldiers, and you knew that something's happening because they got the new uniforms on, nice new guns, very powerful equipment, Actually, it's a pretty close relationship. Out in the field, you're just like brothers, a family member. You just wouldn't want to see anything happen to him. When you go back to the base camp, you got your own little camp there, and you got the tent where everybody gathers and drinks their beer, plays the music, and you don't get along maybe. Might even get in a scuffle. I had one guy, it was my team. He's sitting there and he's throwing his knife and sticking it. And I was sitting here kind of to the side, and I wasn't in a too good mood for some reason. But I was just sitting there, and I told him, I said, quit throwing that thing in my direction. I said, they don't always stick. And the next time he threw it, he hit on the handle and bounced up. I've got a scar on the back of my hand where that knife stuck in the wrist. I think I threw it straight at him. And, he'd been there long enough, he knew to flatten out. So I didn't hit him with it. I'm glad I didn't. But, you're really tied in the bush because that's all you got. And if you'll notice, any of you ever go to a place you're strange, you've never been with this group of people before, and you feel funny just sitting there, your first day of school maybe. First thing you want to do is meet somebody, make a friend. And that's just human nature. You want somebody to be on your side, be your friend. That's where you get out in the bush. You get out there and your life depends on this guy. He knows his life depends on you. And any of you would die for each other. Back in the base camp, that guy can just help himself. You're going to go jump in the bunker. Something happens, But that's just the way it is. Napalm, I wouldn't call that in. I don't like to be burned. Because, if you call it in, you need it that bad. you're in hot water anyway, you better just try to get out of there because they're gonna have to get a little bit of you too. And, we were in a predicament, we weren't infantry out there, big groups. So we did not want to call it in. If we did, they were gonna be right on us anyway. Come like this other deal, when they chased us, it's close contact if we had any at all. And we couldn't call anything in that was gonna blow up like napalm would. I came back without a Purple Heart. I was wounded 2 other times over there, but, I just went to the aid station. I've got a couple little deals in my memoirs that says, Purple Heart, not yet awarded. And, I've never received anything from them. One of them was the incident where they chased us. We killed a 2-point men. I set off a Claymore mine, and we were pretty close to it, but the back of it, the back blast, the plastic, and the bamboo is hidden in everything. I got scars all over my arms from that, chest. So, that was just a thing. He just stung, and we went on. Whatever's happening at the moment, your best decision, your best gut feeling is what you're gonna go with. You weren't even thinking about, fighting for the cause or anything, You were just there taking care of yourself and your buddies. It was no, big, thing like you'd think it was, about God and glory and the flag and die like a Marine or something, and it's not like that when you actually get there. Realization sets in when you step off that airplane and you know that there's people out there that's going to try to kill you, and you just wonder if you're good enough to live through it. But when you get there, everybody's poking fun at you, say, hey, you're the new guy. I'm short. That's what they used to call it. I'm short. 60 days left or something. I liked it except for the part of back then. I loved going out there in the jungle and living, just like that. Beautiful. But some of the animals are scary at night. Snakes, they got different types of pit vipers that like to stay warm next to you when it's monsoon season. But you just learn to move real slow. I woke up one morning with a hot air being blown in my face. And I looked up, and it's a water buffalo standing there. And I'm between his front legs, and he's got his nose down in my face. Luck have it, he was a tame one, belonged to a village close by. But he was trying to see what I was. And at the time, we were getting circled. We were real quiet. We had our weapons ready. We'd hear somebody walking around us. I said, they know we're here. I said, keep it down, Most of us touch and signal. And, we waited, and he kept getting closer and closer. And just a few yards before he got to us, he hit something, tripped and fell into a brush and screamed like a banshee. It was an orangutan. He could smell us, but he couldn't find us. So he was working his way in close to us. And boy, he took off just like Bigfoot running through the woods, crashing and screaming. It scared him worse than it did us. But we were screaming a little bit too, but all of a sudden we started laughing. And it was quite an experience for something like that to happen. You can't imagine how many different ways there is to harm a person. And it's bad that it comes to that in civilization, that you just sit there and think of a way to harm another person. Potion sticks, they are probably one of the ugliest things you can get mounted. Imagine. It's bamboo spikes, and they can be any length, and usually small enough. The ones I encountered were very small diameter, so you could see them very easy. And they would get them at an angle about the average GI's eyes. So when you're walking into them, you don't see them. And you turn around and look behind you, you see 100 of them. You walk through them without getting stuck, and you feel pretty fortunate. They take the points, and they just razor sharp point on them. And they'll dip them in feces and then put them in the ground. We had one guy got stuck in the leg one. He had the awfulest time with gangrene. He was swelling and like he'd been bit by a snake almost before he got to the chopper to get out. And anything like that, they would, nails, anything they could build that would hurt you. That's one reason we didn't use trails. Besides not being ambushed, it was the fact of, being hit with some kind of a booby trap. Some of them were loaded mines. They take our ordnance, our grenades and stuff, and use them against us if they find them. And we've gone back after we made contact and left the area and come back to get our grenades that we had booby trap, and they'd be gone. And then one incident, I mentioned to you about the guy that ran through the middle of us, and we got tickled and started laughing because it was just the moment of some guy running through the middle of you, you're laying there trying to be quiet.
A Vietcong?
Yeah, we'd ambushed him. They were at Vietcong and they were carrying explosives. And we got one of them. He was injured pretty bad. And but anyway, they just scattered. There must have been about 6 of them. But one of them come off the hill right where we were at and run right through the middle, trip it over, and kept going. I don't know the hill, and we got tickled. But we couldn't laugh out loud. We could hear snickers, but we started throwing grenades. And we'd set off our Claymore mines. Our trip wires didn't all go off. We had one over here in a tree. And the next day when they come back to check on the body count and everything, down in a tree, I squeezed it and put the pin back in it. And I left it under one of the bodies. And the reason being, it was already damaged. And I don't know why I even messed with the thing because it could have went off any time. But the little trigger was shot up from the explosion Claymore. I slipped that underneath there, got him down on it good where it wouldn't go off, and pulled the pin out and left. But the reason being, we had smoke grenades and they had instant fuses. And when the enemy comes to get your orders to use it against you, he'll get that grenade and he'll look at it and say, well, that's a white phosphorus grenade. We would use that. Put the pin in it. Next time he gets ready to use it, pulls the pin and it goes off while he's trying to throw it at us. So that was just one of the deals. We'd have one here that had a 3-second delay, and one over here, another tripwire that was instant. And when they hit this one time, the others get there, it goes off, and the other one's running, it hits the other one, it goes off instant. They were our form of booby traps, and they hadn't figured it out yet. So it was pretty advantageous to us for a while. We picked our targets. We made every bullet count, and we didn't usually fire automatic unless we were being attacked. We would go to automatic mode on our rifles. But I had an M14, a semi or fully automatic rifle. I had a 4-power Weaver scope on it, and what we would do is if we couldn't get close enough in for an ambush and to watch a trail, we would set off a ways and we would ambush that way at a distance. You go in a different mode of thinking. I'll make it clear. I didn't see a human when I was fighting in the war. I saw an enemy, somebody that was going to kill me. And I said, I'm going to get him first, if I can. Or I'm going to get away where he can't get me. It's not like you're out there to kill somebody. Because you start thinking like that, you're not going to pull the trigger and then you're going to be dead. You have to just do how you train. And it's preservation. And that's all you're thinking when you're out there. Do your job and survive. And when I used a rifle to snipe with, I saw a target. I didn't see a human. And that's the only way I could have handled it. And the only way I handle it now. It's been 38 years since I've been there, and I still go through it. Right now, I'm 100% disabled with post-traumatic stress disabled. I have complications from Agent Orange, the defoliant they sprayed. They caused resumption of that cause for diabetes. So I'm diabetic. I'm suffering from the COPD and lung disease. And a lot of this stuff is contributing to what I went through. But I'm paying for it now in health wise. But at the same time, if I go outside right now and somebody is burning sticks of wood out there and I smell that smoke, I get a flash and I'm right there in the jungle again, outside a village or something, or coming up on a VC camp or whatever. It just puts me in a real nervous but cautious mode. I have even backed up and looked at the ground for booby traps. And here, 30 years later, that's not right. But it affected me. I can't go deer hunting like other people do. I'm a big deer hunter. I always kill my deer, but that took the fun out of it and the enjoyment of the hunt because I'm so good at getting down in the right place, doing the right thing, and shooting one time. My deer hunting season's over the first day of the year. The more I look back on it, I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. It was an experience of growing up, coming to realization what the real world is. I learned so much there in 1 year that it doesn't compare with what I've learned since about human beings. Due to the post-traumatic stress disorder I have, I've been married 5 times. You can't keep a relationship. You're just unable to keep that certain contact and in close contact with any one individual. It makes life hard on your spouse. You have nightmares. You do things that normally you wouldn't do. You get fits of anger sometimes. You start crying for no reason. And it's torment on any family members or spouse, and even my children, it affected them. So it's really something that'll affect the rest of your life. When I looked out of the airplane and said goodbye to Benwell Air Force Base, leaving Vietnam, that was a sweet time. The rest of it was just a dream. Because when I got there, everything was such a shock and different from what I expected. The rest of the time I was there, it was just like going through a dream. It's not really happening. You're just doing it. When I got back, it was just like that. That was a dream I was in. But, it wasn't, but it just seemed like it was a dream. It didn't really happen. But then you carried it with you the rest of your life.